Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, a book for people who love books. Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. So Mockingbird is a science fiction novel that came out in 1980, and it's a book that I don't think gets nearly as much attention as it deserves. It's one of those books that, whilst it definitely is science fiction, can really be appreciated by people who aren't fans of the sci-fi genre. It's really more a book about humanity and civilization, and it uses the trappings of science fiction to tell that story, but it's not a book that gets bogged down in the kind of detail and world building that sometimes can overwhelm the stories in science fiction. It's by Walter Tevis, and Walter Tevis is, I think, a fantastic writer. He only published 6 novels in his lifetime. I've read 5 of them now, and I absolutely loved all of them. He's a writer whose prose style really appeals to me. He tends to use really short sentences. His books are very easy to understand on like a sentence by sentence level, but they contain a huge amount of depth and insight. He really is a really great writer, and he's someone I'd like to see spoken more about on places like BookTube. He wrote really 2 different kinds of books. So science fiction novels like Mockingbird. The other one of those that I've read by him was The Man Who Fell to Earth, which was very famously filmed with David Bowie in the title role. And then he also wrote what I guess you would call sports books, so books about competitions. So he wrote 2 books about a character called Fast Eddie, who was a pool player. The first of those, The Hustler, which was famously filmed with Paul Newman, and the second of them, The Colour of Money, was filmed with Newman and Tom Cruise. And then he also wrote a book about chess, The Queen's Gambit, which was recently turned into a Netflix show. So he's someone whose work is known through the movies and TV shows based on it, but I don't think many people actually read his books, and I really do think that is a great shame, because I think he's a phenomenally good writer. So Mockingbird is a book set in the far future in America, and it's set in a civilization, in a society that's very different from our own. I mean, there are 2 major differences really, or the 2 biggest differences, I guess, are firstly that nobody can read. Books have been, completely forgotten. People just do not read anymore, and we have lost the ability to read over the years. And the second thing is that there are like human-like robots who are very much part of our society. And the book focuses on a guy who works in a university who becomes the first person who can read for decades. So he teaches himself to read again. And it focuses on, how that changes his life. And in particular on his relationship with one of these humanoid robots who I spoke about, and also a woman who they meet. So these 3 characters are the centre of the book. The relationships between them are completely central to the story. And it's through their perception of the world, through their their emotions and their interactions with things that happen in the story, that we really get a sense of this world. It's one of those stories that has like a quest element to it as well. So that main character does go on a bit of a voyage in the second part of the story, and it reminded me a lot of Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, which is another kind of far future science fiction type story with a very different kind of civilization that focuses on human relationships and has that kind of voyage element as well. So if I was to compare it to 2 books, I think it would be Brave New World and then also Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, because of this really strong element around books within the story, and it's really about what the impact of the lack of books on society has been, and also what the impact on the lives of the life of this guy who starts to read again, what the impact of books is on his life. So as I said at the start, it really is a book for people who love books. It's all about the pleasure, but also the information, the importance, the centrality of books and reading to human existence, and why those things are so important to us. And Tevis tells this story, as I said, said, with like the trappings of science fiction. So one of the things that's fascinating about this book is as you go through it, gradually working out what has changed between our society, the society we recognise, and the society of the book. The gradual erosion of what we would recognise as the fundamentals of society over the years that have led to this new kind of society. And Tevis does that really, really well, but he does it through the lives of his characters, through the experiences of his characters, rather than doing tons and tons of world building. And you really do come to care for these three characters, including the robot. I ended up probably with the largest emotional connection with the robot of all of the characters in the book. The ending of the book is absolutely fantastic and very, very moving and thoughtful and reflective on what humanity is. And Tevis uses this robot character to really reflect on that. So as much you get as much reflection on humanity through the robot characters, the robot character, as you do through the human characters. The other thing I would say about this book, and based on what I've said about it so far, this may come as a surprise to you, is it's very, very funny as well. There are bits that have me laughing out loud. He does a wonderful job of, it's almost like kind of culture clash type stuff, particularly in that second part of the book where the main character goes on a bit of a quest. He meets other characters whose perception of the world is very different from his, and he discovers kind of artifacts and things like that, shall we say. And his interpretation of those artifacts is very, very amusing at times. So as well as painting this picture of a new kind of society, Tevis also holds a mirror up to our society in a really, really interesting and effective way. So there you have my thoughts on Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. I really think you should read it. I think you should read all of his books. I think he is an author who should be rediscovered and talked about. Now, thankfully, unlike some authors I talk about on the channel, his work is still all in print. So definitely worth seeking it out. I really, really do thoroughly recommend him. He's become, over the last couple of years, one of my favourite writers. I really think he's wonderful. Do let me know in the comments if you've read Mockingbird or anything else by Walter Tevis. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.